The emergency alarm screamed through the building as darkness swallowed the server room. I felt the monitor's edge crack against my skull before I understood what was happening. The world tilted sideways and I tasted copper in my mouth. My knees buckled and I hit the cold floor hard. Through blurring vision, I saw my own blood spreading across the white tiles like spilled ink. Footsteps rushed toward me, then stopped. Someone gasped my name. I blinked up at my manager's face hovering above me, her expression twisted with something between rage and panic. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone," she hissed through clenched teeth. I pressed my hand to the back of my head and felt warm liquid seeping between my fingers. The security team burst through the door, their flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. One of them knelt beside me while another radioed for help. My manager stepped back into the shadows as HR badges appeared at the doorway. Someone asked if I could stand. Another person slid a clipboard toward me with shaking hands. "Sign here and we'll get you to urgent care," they said. I pushed myself up on trembling arms, the room spinning violently. "No," I managed to say. "I need a hospital." As they helped me toward the elevator, I looked back and saw her watching me through the closing doors. She was smiling. The emergency room lights burned my eyes. A nurse with gentle hands cut away the blood-matted hair around my wound and cleaned it with something that stung. She leaned close and whispered, "This wasn't an accident, was it?" Before I could answer, she called for a doctor. They ordered a CT scan to check for bleeding in my brain. I lay perfectly still in the machine's tunnel, listening to its mechanical whirring and thinking about what had just happened. 2 hours later, a doctor showed me the results on a computer screen. Concussion. 2 deep cuts that needed staples. They gave me papers about warning signs to watch for and told me to rest completely for at least a week. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and took photos of everything: the staples in my scalp, the discharge papers, the doctor's notes. The nurse who'd helped me earlier squeezed my shoulder. "Document everything," she said quietly. "And don't sign anything without talking to a lawyer first." My phone buzzed with a text from HR. "We can cover an urgent care visit if you confirm the incident was accidental and withdraw your earlier statement about the blackout." I stared at those words until they blurred together. They wanted me silent and compliant. Instead, I backed up all my photos to 3 different cloud accounts. My phone buzzed again. "The security camera in the server room was offline during today's incident. Please confirm this was an accident." I drove home in a fog of pain medication and shock. My apartment felt too quiet as I pulled the curtains closed against the afternoon sun. Every movement made my head throb. I replayed the morning in my mind like a broken recording. During the emergency all-staff meeting, the CEO had demanded answers about the blackout that had knocked out our systems for 6 hours. Everyone else had stayed silent, but I'd spoken up. "Sir, this wasn't random. We deferred a critical backup system upgrade 3 months ago despite multiple warnings. The failure was preventable." The room had gone deathly quiet. My manager's face had turned bright red. The CEO had thanked me for my honesty and dismissed the meeting. I'd walked out on shaking legs, relieved to have finally told the truth. 3 hours later, she'd cornered me in the server room during the second wave of outages. Now I sat in my dark living room, with staples in my skull, trying to understand how honesty had led to violence. My laptop sat on the coffee table. I opened it and started pulling together everything I could remember: emails, maintenance tickets, budget reports, the color-coded calendar I'd been keeping for months to track our infrastructure problems. My fingers paused over the keyboard. In an old spreadsheet buried in my files, I noticed something I'd missed before. A vendor name I didn't recognize, listed right after the upgrade was officially deferred. The payment amount was just under the threshold that would require additional approval signatures. The vendor was called Adaptive Core Solutions. No physical address listed, just a Gmail account on the invoice. The approval column showed one signature, my manager's. My stomach turned over. I clicked through more files, my headache momentarily forgotten. The same vendor appeared 2 more times over the past 3 months. Each invoice was for an amount just below the finance review threshold. The dates lined up perfectly with budget meetings where my manager had announced cost savings that had impressed the executives. But I'd seen those savings reports. The money hadn't actually been saved. It had been moved somewhere else. I took careful screenshots of everything and saved them in multiple locations. Downloaded the PDF invoices, copied the transaction codes. I wasn't ready to accuse anyone of anything yet. The pain medication was making it hard to think clearly. But something was deeply wrong here, and I had the beginning of a trail to follow. I reached for my water bottle and knocked it over, pain shooting through my head with the sudden movement. When I'd cleaned up the spill and sat back down at my laptop, I tried to open the third invoice for a closer look. The file opened to an error message. Access denied. Insufficient permissions. Someone had just locked me out of the shared drive. While I'd been getting staples in my head, someone had been revoking my system access in real time. A new email appeared in my inbox. Due to your medical leave and need for recovery, we're temporarily suspending your access to sensitive financial systems. This is standard procedure. We wish you a speedy recovery. It was signed by my manager, Valerie Torres. I read it 3 times, each word feeling like another blow. Sensitive financial systems, the exact systems I needed to prove what I'd discovered. They were cutting off my access to the evidence. I stood up too fast and had to sit down again as the room tilted. My hands were shaking with anger now, not fear. Then I remembered something that made my heart race. 6 weeks ago, I'd been running unofficial audits on my own time, trying to understand our budget problems. I'd exported a full month of financial logs to my personal external hard drive so I could analyze them without tying up the office network. I'd forgotten all about that backup until now. I pulled the drive from my desk drawer and plugged it in with trembling fingers. The file was still there, a complete export of vendor payments, purchase orders, and approval chains from 3 months ago. Before anyone knew I was looking, before anyone thought to hide anything. I opened the file and searched for Adaptive Core Solutions. The vendor name appeared multiple times, just as I'd remembered. But this older version of the records showed something the current system didn't. When I clicked on the company registration details, it showed a tax identification number. I copied that number and searched for it in the state business registry. The LLC was registered 2 towns over under a name that made my blood run cold. The owner's last name was Castellano, my manager's maiden name. I'd seen it once on an old employee emergency contact form. Castellano wasn't a common name. I sat frozen, staring at the registration document on my screen. The business had been created 4 months ago, right before the first Adaptive Core Solutions invoice appeared in our system. If this was what it looked like, we weren't just dealing with deferred maintenance. We were looking at theft, fraud, self-dealing. I opened a blank document and started building a timeline. First, I'd submitted urgent requests for the backup system upgrade, complete with risk assessments. Then my manager had delayed and delayed, citing budget constraints. Meanwhile, money that should have gone to the upgrade had been funneled to her own company for vague consulting services. The blackout had happened exactly as I'd warned it would, and when I'd told the truth about it, she'd attacked me. I saved the timeline and added the LLC registration, the invoices, the warning emails I'd sent. It all fit together like puzzle pieces I hadn't known I was collecting. But I couldn't just walk into HR with screenshots and accusations. Not with a concussion. Not when they'd already tried to buy my silence. I needed something more. Something that couldn't be dismissed as stress or confusion or revenge. My phone lit up with a message from my coworker, Felix Chen. "Hey, are you okay? I heard what happened. Also, do you remember me mentioning something weird about the security cameras?" The timing of the maintenance windows always seemed off to me. I called Felix immediately, my heart pounding. He answered on the first ring. "I've been thinking about this all day," he said, his voice low like he was afraid of being overheard. The security camera maintenance always happens right before Valerie does her weekly server room walkthroughs. Every single time. I started tracking it a few months ago because it seemed strange, but I thought maybe I was being paranoid. He paused. But today's camera outage? It was already scheduled in the system last week, before anything happened. I closed my eyes, dizzy with more than just the concussion. Scheduled darkness, planned blind spots. "Can you send me screenshots?" I asked. "Everything you have." There was a long silence. If this gets traced back to me, Felix started. It won't, I promised, though I wasn't sure I could keep that promise. But Felix, she hit me with a monitor and they're trying to cover it up. I need your help. 5 minutes later, my email dinged with an encrypted file. Felix had sent screenshots of the camera maintenance logs going back 4 months. The pattern was unmistakable. Every critical inspection, every budget meeting, every moment when someone might have noticed something wrong, the cameras had been conveniently offline. I added everything to my growing evidence folder, alongside my medical records, the ER photos, and the vendor documentation. My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a man's voice said, "If you keep pushing this, you'll lose everything." Then the line went dead. The next morning, HR showed up at my apartment. I watched through the peephole as 2 people in company badges stood in my hallway, holding folders and wearing practiced sympathetic expressions. I thought about not answering, but that would only make things worse. I opened the door. "We wanted to check on you," said the older one, a woman named Patricia from HR. "See how you're recovering." They came inside without waiting for an invitation and sat on my couch. The younger one, whose badge said Kyle from Legal, put a folder on my coffee table. "We've been thinking about your recovery process," Patricia said smoothly. "We'd like to offer you extended paid leave, 8 weeks full salary while you heal." She slid papers toward me. "All we need is for you to sign this agreement that you'll keep company matters confidential. It's standard." I picked up the papers and read them slowly, despite the headache blooming behind my eyes. The document said I could never discuss any incident, accident, or workplace event with anyone outside the company. There was a small payout mentioned, a few $1,000s as a goodwill gesture. My hands tightened on the papers. "No," I said quietly. "I'll take the medical leave that I'm entitled to, but I'm not signing this." Patricia's smile flickered. "We're trying to help you." "Then help me by investigating what actually happened," I said. Kyle from Legal shifted in his seat. "It would be unfortunate if this situation became contentious for everyone involved." I showed them to the door. After they left, I stood in my hallway and caught a glimpse of movement by the elevators. Valerie Torres was there, partially hidden behind a potted plant, watching my door. Our eyes met for a brief second before she turned and disappeared down the stairs. The apartment felt suffocating. My head throbbed, but I couldn't rest. I created a new folder structure and started writing everything in plain language. What I'd warned about, who approved what and when. The blackout and its causes. The attack, the missing camera footage. The shell company. I wrote until my vision blurred, then saved everything to 3 cloud services and a thumb drive I kept in my freezer. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about being seen. About making sure the official story, where I'd had an accident and was quietly recovering with a payout, didn't become the only story. My calendar alert chimed. Tomorrow morning, I had a return-to-work readiness call. I clicked the invite. HR, Legal, Valerie, and CEO Kenneth Walsh would all be there. They were going to control the narrative before I could tell my side. I had 18 hours to decide how to handle it. I joined the video call and turned off my camera, staying on mute. Kenneth appeared first, looking tired. Then Patricia, Kyle, and Valerie in a sun-filled office. Patricia started with corporate speak about well-being and support. Valerie jumped in. "I've been so worried. The accident was devastating." Accident. That word again. Kenneth cleared his throat. "What do you need to feel safe?" I unmuted. "I need a guarantee that all evidence will be preserved, and I need to submit a detailed report directly to you without editing from anyone else." Dead silence. Kyle spoke carefully. "We have standard processes that involve review by the employee's supervisor." The standard process, I said steadily, had the camera offline during the incident. "So I don't trust it." More silence. Kenneth said slowly, "Submit your report to me directly." Before he could continue, Valerie cut in fast. "For chain of command purposes, all reports should come through proper channels, through me." I ended the call and stared at my screen. Chain of command, the same chain that led to a monitor cracking my skull. I started writing 2 reports. The first was careful and diplomatic. The second was the truth, footnoted and thorough, with embedded evidence links. I sent the diplomatic version through the official system to Valerie's inbox. Then I pulled up an old email from Kenneth's assistant Yasmin, telling me to reach out directly for infrastructure emergencies. This qualified. I attached the full report and sent it to Yasmin's personal email. Subject line, urgent. Evidence of fraud and workplace violence. I hit send and printed a hard copy, sliding it into a manila folder with the date written in permanent marker. An hour later, Kenneth's office replied, "Your report has been received. Please refrain from discussing this externally while we review." I was reading it when I noticed something in the metadata. In the blind carbon copy field, someone had made a mistake. A board member's email address was visible. Octavia Sterling's contact information stared right at me. I looked at that email address for a long time. Octavia Sterling sat on the audit committee. If leadership wanted to bury this, one board member could force it into the light. I created a new email from a secure browser and attached everything: timeline, vendor documents, LLC registration, camera logs, ER papers, injury photos. This is happening under your oversight. If you value the company's reputation and staff, you will act independently. I added one line: the CEO has been notified but may face pressure to handle this quietly. I hit send before I could reconsider. For 30 minutes, nothing happened. I paced, my head pounding. Then my phone buzzed. The company calendar updated. A new meeting appeared. Board closed session, emergency review, scheduled for tomorrow morning. Only board members listed. No executives, no managers, just the board. I sat down hard, hands trembling. I'd just triggered something that couldn't be stopped. My phone buzzed constantly. Chat channels lit up with speculation. Meetings canceled across the organization. Valerie posted in all staff. Reminder that speculation about company matters is unprofessional. But people weren't focusing on work. They were whispering in private messages. My phone lit up with a message from CTO Warren Hughes. "Can't say anything officially, but hold tight. Things are moving." I didn't know what to say back. I spent the afternoon organizing evidence one more time, making sure every file had backups, creating a master document linking everything chronologically. My doorbell rang as the sun set. A delivery person with a certified letter. I signed for it. The return address was from a law firm. Inside was a single sheet from Beverly Harper, General Counsel at Pinnacle Freight, our biggest client. The letter was brief. "We have received documentation suggesting infrastructure failures at your company may constitute negligence. We are suspending all new projects pending investigation. Our legal team will contact your board directly." By morning, everything had changed. Pinnacle Freight had frozen their portal. They'd locked us out. Felix told me sales was panicking, running emergency calls with other clients. Kenneth scheduled an emergency all-hands for that afternoon. The invite promised transparency and information. I received a separate email from the board secretary. "Please preserve all records related to recent incidents. Do not delete, modify, or destroy any materials. Formal preservation notice." The tone had completely shifted. I wasn't being silenced. I was being told to save everything. My phone buzzed with a message from Valerie. "You don't want to do this. People don't forget disloyalty. Think about your career." I stared at those words. 6 months ago, that would have terrified me. Now it just made me angry. I opened my photo library and found the ER picture, staples in my scalp, date stamp visible. I sent it to her with no words. She didn't respond. At the all-hands, Kenneth appeared looking exhausted. "We have begun an independent investigation into last week's failure and subsequent events." He paused. "Effective immediately, one of our managers has been placed on administrative leave." My phone exploded with messages. 20 minutes later, Felix sent a photo. Valerie walking out of the building, security on either side, carrying a box of personal items. I thought I could breathe. Instead, the next morning brought new email from legal. "As part of the investigation, we need forensic imaging of all devices you used for work. Please bring your laptop and phone for processing." They wanted my devices, the ones holding my evidence. I called Felix. "Is this normal?" "Yeah, actually, but get a proper chain of custody receipt." That afternoon, I brought my devices to the office. I handed them to Kyle and held out my hand. "I need a written receipt with serial numbers, date, time, and your signature." He blinked, surprised, but filled out the form I'd printed. As I was leaving, Felix caught me in the parking lot. "They're trying to figure out who sent the board that anonymous packet," he whispered. There's an investigation within the investigation. I kept my face neutral. 2 days later, the external audit firm requested to interview me in person, alone, at a neutral location. We met at a Hampton Inn conference room. 2 auditors sat across from me, Simone and Derek. I'd brought printed copies of my timeline, color-coded by date. I slid it across the table. They asked human questions. What did you warn about? How did leadership respond? Walk us through the server room. I answered clearly, fighting through concussion fog. When I reached the part about the monitor, Simone's expression tightened. Did anyone witness the attack? The room was dark during the blackout, but people heard it, and HR showed up very quickly with paperwork. I showed them vendor invoices, the LLC registration matching Valerie's maiden name, the camera maintenance schedule creating blind spots. They didn't seem surprised. Thank you for preserving these, Derek said quietly. I left feeling lighter. As I crossed the hotel lobby toward my car, I glanced at the bar area and froze. Valerie sat at a corner table with Russell Pierce, our finance director. I watched as she pulled a flash drive from her purse and slid it to him. He pocketed it quickly, looking around. Neither had seen me. I took 3 quick photos and slipped out the side exit. The next morning, the audit team requested a second interview. This time, 3 of them came to my apartment. Simone got straight to the point. We found additional irregularities. Secondary payments routed through a contingency reserve fund, approved by Russell Pierce in finance. My skin prickled. It wasn't just Valerie. The patterns match what you documented, Derek added. Payments under approval thresholds, vague descriptions, timing corresponding with deferred maintenance. I pulled out my phone and showed them the hotel bar photos. Simone studied them carefully. When did you take these? Yesterday, right after our meeting. She exchanged looks with the others. This is helpful. We'll need the originals. I sent the files to their secure tablet. After they left, I sat on my couch feeling dizzy. The conspiracy was bigger than I'd thought. That afternoon, HR sent certified mail. Due to organizational restructuring, your position is being reviewed. You will be notified of status changes within 30 days. They were trying to force me out after everything. While HR tried to push me out, Felix discovered something new. Late one night, he sent an encrypted message. The technician signing camera maintenance requests doesn't exist in our vendor database. His certification number comes back invalid. I sat up in bed, suddenly awake. Send everything. His screenshots showed maintenance requests signed by B. Morrison, senior technician. But there was no Morrison in our vendor system, no certification, no company registered anywhere. A ghost technician creating scheduled blind spots for months. Added a new section to my evidence. Manufactured camera failures. Infrastructure money diverted to fake companies. Warnings ignored. Preventable blackouts. Cameras offline at critical moments. Violence to silence the whistleblower. I sent the findings to the audit team. By morning, received. This corroborates our server log findings. That morning, I got a message from an unknown email. My name is Heather Klein. I left 9 months ago. I heard what happened. I still have my exit interview notes, the ones HR said they'd look into. They never did. Want them? Heather's exit interview notes arrived an hour later. Devastating. Pages of documented problems, retaliation against employees questioning budget decisions, creative accounting making failing projects look successful, pressure to close tickets without fixes. Names, dates, patterns. She'd submitted all of this to HR 9 months ago. Nothing happened. The notes disappeared into corporate bureaucracy or were deliberately buried. I read everything twice, hands shaking with anger and vindication. This wasn't new. These problems had been building for months, maybe years. I just got hurt badly enough that it couldn't be hidden. I forwarded everything to the audit team and board secretary. This pattern isn't new. It's just finally visible. An hour later, my phone rang. A woman from the State Labor Board. We received a workplace safety complaint about your injury. We've opened a file and need your medical documentation. I almost laughed with relief. I have extensive documentation. I'll send everything today. That night, I got a confidential email from the board secretary. The audit firm delivered preliminary findings. Evidence suggests probable self-dealing and workplace retaliation. Criminal referral may be warranted. By morning, that confidential report had leaked to an industry trade publication. The news blog posted a sanitized version. No names, just sources indicate financial irregularities and workplace violence at mid-sized logistics firm. But within our industry, everyone knew. Comments filled with speculation, then with stories. Former employees sharing their own experiences with companies that swept problems away. I recognized names from my company. People who'd left suddenly, quietly paid off, or threatened into silence. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. That night, a new email landed in my personal inbox from Kenneth Walsh's personal address. Subject: Can we talk? The message was brief. I understand if you don't want to speak with me, but we need to have an off-the-record conversation. What would it take for you to stay? Would you help us rebuild? I stared at that email for an hour. Part of me wanted to say it was too late, but another part remembered why I'd spoken up. Not for revenge, for the truth, and to fix something broken. I sent back one line: in person, tomorrow, public location. He replied within minutes: coffee shop on Market Street, 10 a.m. I got to the coffee shop early and chose a table by the window where everyone could see us. When Kenneth arrived, he looked exhausted. He ordered coffee for both of us. I failed you, he said without preamble. The board failed you. We created an environment where someone felt comfortable stealing and attacking employees who spoke up. That's on me. I waited. What would it take for you to stay? Not just stay. Help us fix this. Rebuild the systems we should have had. I pulled out a folded paper from my jacket. I'd written my terms last night. Full medical leave with back pay, guaranteed job protection with contract, new position reporting to the board's audit committee, mandatory dual approval for infrastructure deferrals, regular, external camera audits, third-party whistleblower protections, and an apology, written, signed in my permanent file. Real acknowledgement, not corporate PR. I slid the paper across. Kenneth read carefully. We can do all of this. The criminal investigation is out of my hands. The Attorney General's office has opened a case. But these changes, yes. He pulled out a pen and signed the bottom. Would you lead our new Systems Integrity Department? Within a week, everything moved fast. Valerie Torres and Russell Pierce were both terminated for cause. The audit firm's final report went to the Attorney General, recommending prosecution for fraud and embezzlement. HR went through leadership transition. Everyone who'd tried to cover this up was reassigned or pushed out. I got an official letter on company letterhead. We failed to protect you and failed to act on your concerns. For this, we apologize without reservation. Signed by Kenneth and 3 board members. The letter outlined policy changes, mandatory external vendor audits, compliance hotline run by outside firm, new camera systems with redundant recording, dual authority requirements for infrastructure decisions, and my new role, Director of Systems Integrity, reporting to the board. My medical bills were paid in full. Settlement included back pay and raise. But more than that, it included a promise this would never happen to anyone else. My first day back was Monday. Same building, same server room, same elevator where I'd seen Valerie's smile. I stood outside my apartment that morning, car keys in hand. My phone buzzed with a message from Felix. We're all waiting. You've got this. I touched the thin scar on my scalp. Then I drove to work. The office felt different when I walked in. People actually looked at me with respect. My new office was on the executive floor. A nameplate read, Kira Santos, Director of Systems Integrity. I ran my fingers over the letters. The first thing I did was call a meeting with my new team, 6 people who'd been quietly fighting the same battles. Felix was there, grinning. We spent 2 hours on everything that needed to change. Not just policies, but culture. We're going to be the people who ask why when everyone says because, I told them. We're going to keep the lights on and records honest, and we're never going to be quiet when something's wrong. That afternoon, Simone called. Valerie and Russell had both been formally charged with fraud, theft, and felony assault. The trial wouldn't happen for months, but the evidence was overwhelming. Pinnacle Freight called the next day. They were resuming their contract. 2 other paused clients came back too. The company was wounded, but would survive. That evening, I stood in the server room doorway where everything had changed. I could still see the spot where I'd fallen, but I didn't feel afraid. I felt like I'd survived something meant to destroy me. My first week as director was a blur of meetings, policy drafts, and system reviews. Friday afternoon, I walked through the building alone. Past the conference room where I'd told the truth. Past the server room where that truth nearly cost me everything. Past the elevator where I'd seen Valerie's face disappearing behind closing doors. I ended up at my office, staring at my reflection in the window. There was a thin white line at my hairline where the staples had been. In certain light, barely visible. In other light, obvious. A permanent reminder of what happens when silence becomes more valuable than truth. My phone buzzed with email from Kenneth. Subject, board approval, new company-wide whistleblower policy. I opened it and smiled. Everything I'd pushed for was there in black and white. I thought about Heather, who'd tried reporting problems 9 months ago and got nowhere. I thought about everyone who'd left quietly, carrying their stories like secrets. I thought about the version of myself so scared to speak up in that meeting, knowing it might cost everything. It had cost me blood, pain, weeks of fear, and lingering headaches. But it gave me this. The power to make sure it never happened again. I touched the scar one more time, feeling the ridge under my fingertips. Then I sat down at my desk and got back to work. They'd tried to break me with that monitor. Instead, they'd built the person who would break the system that protected them. My phone buzzed with a message from Felix. First policy draft is ready for your review. I opened the document and read through the new protocols. Mandatory dual sign-offs, external audits every quarter, anonymous reporting with third-party investigation, camera systems with redundant backups that couldn't be conveniently disabled. Every change was a small victory against the culture that had allowed corruption to flourish. I made notes in the margins, strengthening the language, closing potential loopholes. This was my job now, not just fixing broken systems, but preventing them from breaking in the first place. As the sun set outside my office window, I realized something. The scar on my head wasn't just a reminder of what I'd survived. It was proof that I'd refused to disappear. And that's how I learned that sometimes the smallest voice in the room can change everything. As long as you're brave enough to use it.